Welcome everybody to Vijay's final presentation before submission. Alright.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much everyone for coming in for my presentation. I'd like to acknowledge and thank my supervisors, Sva Models, Chris Lonsfeld, and Dr. Jesse Bull for seeing me through this part. Thank you so much. For my thesis, for my research study, I actually developed a mental skills training program, and through this research decided to test the effectiveness of it. Just a brief overview of what I'll be presenting, mental skills training, and in the context with the research that I've done. Study 1 will look at meta-analysis. Study 2, the development of psychometric and psychometrics of the questionnaire, TOPS, which is a test of performance strategies. This is a revised version. Study 3, we look at the intervention study. There are 3 parts to it. Part A was the psychometrics of TOPS, and because of a lot of overlap with the previous study, so I omitted that for the presentation. And I'll be presenting part B and part C, which is the qualitative and the quantitative component of it. And then I'll finish up with the concluding remarks. And of course, then question and answer as well. This is an overview of what I plan to do. I put together a set of mental skills that was most common and widely used in terms of enhancing sports performance. And these were goal setting, relaxation, mental imagery, and self-talk. Now, what I thought is, how about, the literature itself shows and says that these are quite effective on their own right. But what I wanted to see was to put them into a package and then see how effective that was. So to do that, couldn't measure the performance straight away, so I looked at the self-concept, flow, mental toughness, and life effectiveness as the outcome measures. And anticipating that these are the measures that actually enhances the sports performance. So, meta-analysis, the main purpose was again to look at what the literature was talking about in terms of the single skills and also the multi-component. Multi-component in this case was more than one skill put together. Previous studies showed that duration of the mental practice was a significant moderator. So I looked at that and the variance of the mental practice, the length of the intervention, the actual length of the mental strategies itself, and also the number of trials. Also, there was a 30-year-old finding that less than 3-minute mental practice gets most gain in performance. So I wanted to test that as well. How different was my meta-analysis to the others? I reported the effect size of the multi-component as well. And also, in my meta-analysis, I had a very different version of mental practice. The traditional view was that it was more like a visualization or a mental imagery. I looked at the broader concept, which incorporated other mental strategies as well. So the steps in mental meta-analysis, identifying the studies from 1980 onwards that had interventions of these mentioned mental strategies, including multi-component skill, searched through 7 databases. The eligibility criteria looked at peer-reviewed articles only, randomized controlled trials, quasi-experimental, and pre-post, as long as they had interventions. They must either directly or indirectly enhance sports, and it's not just physical education. Of course, full text English, and the population I looked at a range of it, elite to sub-elite, male, female, and ages that I was able to get was from 10 years to 4 years. Just an overview of the flow diagram. We started with just over 4,700 articles. Full text was 201, and we ended up with 127, and those that were removed, reasons were given for those. The results, over 6,000 participants were involved in the whole meta-analysis. And you can see over 60% of volunteers, so that's largely high school and university students were represented in that meta-analysis. RCT, 57% represented, and also imagery was the most highly represented with 34%. Multi-component, which was that was what I was more keen on and looking at, was about 25%. The results. The overall mental skills effect size, 0.72. There was 18% variance within studies and 70% between studies. So we looked at the moderator analysis to examine the between study variation. Now, just before that, for the moderator analysis, the duration of the mental skills was the only factor or only thing that was found significant, but and the rest did not. But here I included, just as an overview, to have a comparison of where single skill compares with multi-component skills. However, this is not significant, but multi-component does have a good, high effect size. The duration of the intervention, this is the length of the intervention. 8 to 21 days seems to have a highest effect size. When I looked at the actual length of the mental practice itself, 0 to 3 minute, highest effect size. And if you can see, there's a non-linear relationship, but I think even from the one before here, you can see that as the length of the intervention increases, the effect size decreases over here. And for this one here, there's a decrease in the effect size with the increase in length. The number of trials as well, 13 to 24, seems to be more effective. And again, as we go higher, the effect size decreases. So these are summary findings. It's consistent with other meta-analysis that mental skills does enhance sports performance. Again, duration in here was also a moderator variable, and effect size declines with the increasing length of mental practice.
Did you look at professional versus non-professional athletes?
Both combined.
Was that a moderator?
Yeah, it was a moderator, but it wasn't significant. Study 2, development of TOPS 2. Now, with this TOPS 2, the original TOPS was found by Professor Lane and his colleagues in 2004 that it lacked good psychometric properties. So what that happened was it prompted Hardy and his colleagues. Hardy was the second author of the original TOPS. It prompted him to revise the original TOPS, and he came up with a TOPS 2, a revised version. Now TOPS 2 was slightly longer, it has 68 items, and he found that the revised version had a better fit. Fits here 0.95 and over. It was acceptable.
Oh.
It's in the header.
It's in the header.
So this is what you call
Can I just continue with that? Just right?
We'll turn the timer off. 20 minutes. But Phil might not agree to that.
Yeah, I think so. Where's your
USB, it's in there.
oh.
It's in Okay, about tops, just briefly, this was a revised version. That's the one that I looked at because the original one had some, it lacked good mathematical properties. Hardy was the second author of the original one, so he went ahead and he revised the version. And it came out to be an acceptable fit. So the question is, why did I need a shorter version? For my intervention study, I needed a battery of assessments, instruments, and so to reduce the administration time, I decided to have a shorter version. So the purpose for this study too was to get a shorter, robust version and also critically examine the TOPS 2S, which was the revised version, and also the short form. We were able to get the data at that time for the most current data from one of the authors of the TOPS, Professor Thomas, and we used the recommended criteria by Marsh et al., Marsh and his colleagues, and there are 5 basic guidelines that were adopted. That the original document instrument should be strong, it was. The short form should retain the content coverage of each factor. Each factor must be adequately reliable, retain the factor structure, and a minimum of 3 items per factor was adopted. And that's the criteria that I used. We used the CFA and ESM analysis to test the factor structure of both the TOPS 2 and the TOPS and the short form. And the reason again was why ESM. Current CFA standards are too restrictive and applied to the research. They do not meet the minimum criteria of acceptable fit. That's what Herb and his colleagues said. So we thought we will test that as well. Now the results, we found that the reliability estimates were reasonable, high, 0.8 and over, except for this one over here. It was for the TOPS 2S, 0.686, and that was the corresponding one to the original TOPS. So it was expected that it will be marginally below 7. When we looked at the fit structure, the long form, the acceptable, I suppose, but we had a better fit with the TOPS, the short form. And if you compare the fits indices, they are better. And when we compared the ESM to the CFA, the ESM results for both the long form and also for the short form, they showed better fit than the CFAs. The factor loadings were reasonably high as well for both the CFA and ESM. We compared them for both competition and practice as well. So we concluded that we have a decent or robust TOPS to short form that I could use for my intervention study. And again, ESM seems to have a better an advantage over CFA, and it's recommended that ESM should be also used for analysis as well. My last study, intervention study, the primary purpose was to test the the mental skills package that I had developed. I used a mixed model, like I said before, and also I used the train the trainer model to test this with the athletes. The quantitative analysis, the part B, examining the effectiveness of the intervention. We measured the use of the mental strategies, whether it increased, and also I looked at the effect on the mental toughness, self-concept, flow, and life effectiveness. I termed this as a psychological strength, just to make it easier for referencing. Method. 15 secondary schools in Fiji took part in the program of over 429 students. These were from grade 7 to 12, and they represented under 12, under 15s, under 17s, and under 19s school football team. And 25 teachers took part in the program, and the design I chose was RCT. So the final battery test included the TOPS, the short form, and EASDQ, MTI, flow, and life effectiveness. Analysis. Now, we found that in part A, the competition and practice scales in Fiji data correlated very, very high, and therefore those were combined for our regression analysis for part B. And we used two models, two SCM models, and the reason of that was because of a lot of missing data as well. Model 1 accounted for the sample that included participants from wave 1. They may not have been in wave 2. And model 2 sample included those participants who completed both wave 1 and wave 2. And female estimation was used to handle missing data. The results, mixed results. We saw that the goal setting, attention control, imagery, and emotional control, they had intervention effect for both the model 1 and model 2. Just for imagery, in the model 1 it did not show the intervention effect, but in model 2 there was an effect. So I can summarize that if for part A, mental skills intervention, we had some effect on some of the strategies, not all of it. And there were no intervention effect on mental toughness, self-concept, and life effectiveness, except for one lone factor in a flow, and that was challenge skill balance. And this factor measures the balance between the challenges of the situation and one skill. That was the only one that was that had an intervention effect. The different approaches of handling missing data led to a similar pattern, and this indicates the robustness of our findings as well. Part C. For part C, it was a qualitative analysis. The main purpose was to gain an insight into the coach's implementation of the intervention program. I used 5 open-ended questions via telephone and used thematic analysis to analyze the data. Verbatim data was accounted and ideas were extracted and coded, and they were then defined into themes and sub-themes, which captured the overall research questions. I also used the en vivo to get some ideas and themes, to just give some ideas and themes as to what were some of those that were apparent via the coaches' interviews. And just from that, I probably say that coaches felt that the program worked well, and it really helped them. So some of the themes that I was able to get from the thematic analysis: the use of the mental strategies, the frequency of the use, It was quite well used by the athletes. This is what the coaches are saying. And the football performance, the individual performance, they got a sense of the game, improved their performance. And for the team performance as well, teams won more games and they did better than some of their studies teams. Personal development, school performance, they said that it helped kids or the students prepare for exams and they got better grades, and also helped them control their emotions, including anger. And these are the competencies gained by the coaches. Self-regulation, they said they were able to use it for themselves, managing their emotions as well. And they found that they were able to use some of their skills to better manage and coach the students. And they also were able to take this back into their classroom. That's what they said to me. Recommendations, they said, look, this kind of program should be included in the whole school curriculum. So summary, overall, this part, the qualitative, showed that the trainer model may be a good model that can be an effective model that can be used to reach out to more participants, I suppose, athletes and players. Players were able to use some of the skills that they learned. However, those results did not transfer to the psychological strength, the self-concept, mental toughness, flow, and I would say life effectiveness as well. And that, I think, maybe because it was a 5-week program, and 5 weeks may not be enough for the coaches to learn the program themselves and then transfer this into their players. So overall, from the thesis, my meta-analysis, mental practice duration was a significant moderator, and more is not necessarily better. 3 minutes or less is showed largest effect sizes. The tops two, we were able to prepare a robust short form, and that I was able to use it for my intervention study. And the intervention study itself, trainer model, seemed to have worked for me, and the two models were used to improvise on the missing data as well, and we were able to find robustness in the finding. And the players were able to use some of the skills for the personal benefit, and coaches also gained some personal benefits of this as well. Thank you so much.
Did you look at the sports type?
I did.
What was the main sport? Football?
The sport type, I categorized into 3 different categories because there were a range of it. What do you mean, for my intervention? Or?
Yeah, for the intervention, yeah.
No, just for soccer.
It's just soccer?
Yeah,
okay.
just
DG, no football, soccer, wow.
It's changed now. I would have, I did ask for rugby as well, but there was a huge cyclone in Fiji. I think it killed about over 40 people and did so much damage. So I had to cancel on
that's
and just work with the data that I had.
But in the meta-analysis, you didn't see differences between sports?
Just categorize them into 3 different categories with the cognitive, those sports that require cognitive ability, and the strength, and also the other one was cognitive strength and agility.
So what's the cognitive? Sure, is golf in the cognitive?
Cognitive would be, well, I think some of the, no, it was motor actually. So motor would be with hands and movement. Strength would have been where it shows a lot of physicality in it. And cognitive would be that requires more thinking in terms of...
What's an example?
From on top of my head, that's a good question.
You don't consider
It was
chess
very
a
easy.
sport, do you?
Chess, yeah, chess is a sport. Dance is a sport as
Chess
well.
is a sport?
Chess can be classed, but I did not have any chess in my
Okay.
analysis.
Dance is your thinking?
Dance was considered a sport if you use it as a competitive
That would be
sport.
agility, right? Is silence a sport?
The intervention is kind of tricky because you were really training the coaches. And you were training the coaches how to be better coaches. And then you were looking at the effects of this training on the students. And so that's a tough one. And then what you found is that the things that you directly train the coaches to do, the students actually, for the most part, improved in those areas. But then the follow-on, the self-concept and life effectiveness and stuff like that, you didn't get. But you were asking a lot for the intervention because you train the coaches. You assume that your training of the coaches would work on the students. The students would not only have these mental skills, but these mental skills would then lead on to other benefits and so forth. And so you got improvement in the mental skills, you got the coaches qualitatively saying that they liked it, but you didn't get the follow-on to the flow and self-concept. That was asking a lot, particularly for a 5-week intervention. I guess an important limitation is that it would have been great to have gone back 6 or 8 weeks later to see if there were sleeper effects with some of those other things, so that after the kids develop their mental skills, that if in fact then the other things would follow on. So obviously a limitation is that you didn't have a long-term follow-up, but the results sort of hang together in terms of what you did find.
Yeah, that would be that.
Now, do you think you would have had flow-on effects to the other outcomes that you were what you called psychological strength if you had had a follow-up?
I'm confident about that there would have been an effect if I had gone back. It might be a little bit longer, I suppose, because there were a lot of obstacles for me as well. Because when I started this, when I went in and did the groundwork, I had a very good feedback and they were all keen and interested. But then there was a change in the government and we had a new minister. And the new minister, he just probably wanted to show how good he was, I suppose. And it was weird, I suppose, information and orders were given in for schools to improve the raw marks of the students as well. And they were said, principals were given ultimatum, if the marks don't improve, your job was on the line. And this was all in the papers as well. So when I went in there were a number of schools who decided not to have sports program in the afternoons. And they were focusing on study, getting kids to improve their raw marks. And some of the weekend programs, they actually started doing academic work on weekends as well. So I struggled a lot in terms of getting the principals to work with me. So the teachers were reluctant, so I had to go to the principals. And it was hard work because I found that this mental skills was very beneficial for me, and when I finish I'll show you some too. And I think I put a little bit of emotion into it. It wasn't just a mental skills for me, it was a little bit more than that. And I think I went in and impressed the coaches, and then I went into schools and ran workshops as a volunteer for their programs. They also had a new system where we already got this system of teachers requiring certain number of points to keep their skills or registrations. So using that opportunity, I went into schools and started running PD programs. based on this, but modified it to suit mental health and the stress factor that they were going through. So they all welcomed this. And through this process, I was able to get to the teachers and collect a lot of data. Principals really came on board at that time and helped me out. But it was difficult, it was not easy. I do the whole thing very differently or not do it. It's a mammoth task, especially going overseas and doing this program when all of a sudden the political situation changes and then you have to work at it. And luckily I'm from Fiji. I was a teacher in Fiji as well before coming to Australia. So I knew the system and I worked with it.
Vijay, I think you are a bit lucky, in fact, that your meta-analysis shows that you don't need a long program to get effects. Is it right?
So what
The duration of the program does not need to be long to get effects.
that is right.
Yeah, okay.
That's right.
So your program is actually quite long.
Yes. In terms of the meta-analysis results, yes. But in terms of the coaches taking the program and implementing to the players, that's where we don't know how much of it transferred to the kids. And for any skill, if it's a new skill to be learned, 3 minutes is not enough, you know. I mean, we all know that because it takes a while for them to learn a skill. So I probably think that 3 minutes that was stated there would probably be, or most likely be for elite athletes as well. And also, I didn't have the time to go through that, but the non-linear relationship that was evident on the effect sizes, that probably was attributed to the some meta-analysis or some studies will be looking at the effects of these mental skills on the novice athletes, participants, and some would be on elite. So the amount of, the length of the practice will make a difference, who it is being used to.
Also, didn't the meta-analysis say that the program had to be at least 13 weeks?
Yeah, we had to cut it short because of the program in Fiji. Yeah.
And yours, your meta-analysis said it was 13 to 24 weeks was kind of the peak effect, or did I remember that wrong? And so,
I think it was, I think it was about that.
Yeah, so, and your program's 5 weeks, so.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I had to improvise, yes.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, but I mean, that's why probably the effect was also a little less than you would have expected if you were able to actually have a knowledge.
Can I, this is, I want to present something very personal. And I thought if I put it over here, it might be better. If I speak about it, I don't know if I would get emotional. So. Now, some of you probably know that, and Alex knows it as well. I started, this is my second go at PhD. In 1999, I had a go before as well, and for 3 years I was able to work with Alex, and Dennis was my principal supervisor and collected the data, and then I had to quit because I was going through some tough times. And what really happened when I quit, that was in 2001, things became a bit worse for me. So from bad to worse. The reason why I know I was feeling like that, because I'm a psychologist. I've been practicing psychologist for over 14 years now. You know, I was treating people with depression and anxiety that I was struggling with. And that And I managed. Maybe because I was involved into sports a bit. That helped a little bit. But for 10 years I struggled with it. And for 10 years, I'd wake up about midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, just about every night. In the last 5 years before I enrolled for PhD, I actually visited, in the last 5 years, 4 cardiologists. And I knew that it was a psychosomatic pain that I was struggling with. I had chest pains every day, just about every day. At my work, there were times where I would take time off at lunchtime and go and see a GP because I thought I might have it. And then I had a lifeline from her. For me, that lifeline it was literally a lifeline. And in my second year, third year, I used the mental skills training, the mental skills that I researched, and then I just loved it. There were nights where I would just leave this PhD thing and I'd follow through some of the skills, how it was useful. Like there was a lot of research on how it was managing emotions for people as well in terms of mental health. I started using this every day. And for the last 5-6 years, I've been using it every day. And that's why when I went and did this program in Fiji with the coaches, I think the emotion came out from me. And I was able to show it to them, that how effective it can be. Later on, I went and ran some programs in Fiji. I ran a national suicide prevention in Fiji for the Ministry of Education. And it was in the news and newspapers and the TV as well. I ran lots of programs here in Australia as well. I'm putting my hands up in every school and I'm running this similar program, modified it to help the teachers. And I'm also running this program. I'm going into the classroom. I work at a behavior school. All the kids at one of my schools, it's got dual diagnosis of mental health, lower IQ plus ODD behaviors or conduct disorders, autism, and that got it. And I've been working there for 14 years now. When I started this PhD, I developed this program and I started going into classrooms. Many times when I go into the classroom, the kids would just shut the door, they'll tell me to F off and they will be gone. And I never gave up, and slowly I started working with them. There were times when the school, as soon as I walk towards the kids, they will tell me to F off. Like, this is a behavior school, they'll tell Vijay F off. But when they find me on my own, they'll come up to me and they'll say, Vijay, can I come and see you for the program? There were kids, these are the kids who are displaced, disadvantaged kids. They'll come and lie down in my office. But outside, in front of others, they don't want to see me, they don't want to talk to me. In my office, I was running this mental skills program. I'm sorry.